Thank you, Ainsworth, Noah, ADAC, and Jerry Prayer. Welcome to ADAC's Digital Day, Finding the Right Fit, defining your brand to make the best impact and increase revenue opportunities. From partnerships to licensing agreements, with the pandemic leading to more virtual engagements, designers must define an online presence that is authentic. This conversation is about finding your authentic self digitally and translate that into new opportunities in 2021. Today, our guests are Michael Cohen of Samuel & Sons and Beth Holman, president of Zoffany USA.
Joy, you want me to take it from here?
Yes, please. Oh, I will do, yes.
Oh, you did, go ahead.
No, your video, that's fine, sorry.
Okay, I didn't know if there was
Yeah, I think you're gonna show three slides. Okay, and I will do your intros. I will do your, okay, then, I'm sorry. I will do the bios. Beth Holman is the president and CEO of Zoffany USA. Prior to joining the company, she served as vice president wholesale for Celine New York, LVMH Group. Her extensive experience with high fashion industry brands includes Roberto Cavalli, Alberto Ferretti, and Christian Dior, all known for exquisite designs. Beth brings that unique understanding of the luxury market to the venerable heritage design brands that are now part of Zoffany family, including Sanderson, Harlequin, Skyon, Anthology, and Morris & Company, which celebrates its 160th anniversary this year. Michael Cohen joined Samuel & Sons in 1998, following his studies at NYU Stern Business School and a short career in finance. Upon joining Samuel & Sons, Michael implemented various systems throughout the organization, positioning it for expansion. As president of Samuel & Sons, Michael has led the brand over the past 2 decades to become the global leader of luxury interior design trimmings. During that time, Michael has overseen the expansion of Samuel & Sons from a single New York showroom to flagship showrooms in Chicago, Los Angeles, London, and coming this month, Dallas, as well as distribution throughout the globe. Michael, take it away. Kick us off.
Thank you, Joy. This is very flattering. I'm gonna let you speak to my family. Yeah, I'll kick you off with just in terms of building the Samuel & Sons brand. I think one of the first things we can do is just talk about some of the partnerships that we have done over the past 10 to 15 years. The first one on the left is the most recent collaboration with Lori Weitzner. So Lori's fantastic to work with, and she brought a very different perspective to Passementry, especially at the time that we started our collaboration over 10 years ago. And since that time, we have collaborated with several designers, including Roger Thomas, who oversees Wynn Design and Development for many years, Michael Smith, Tim Corrigan, and Laura Carrar. Each collaboration for us has really brought a new perspective. Each one of them has their own style, and has really helped in building the Samuel & Sons brand to not just service one aesthetic or what our very talented design studio does bring, but then brings very different things as well. So that was the intention there, working with all these designers. But beyond that, if we can go to the next slide, more recently, we did a partnership with Perennials. And so extending from working with a designer, this was the idea is to work with a brand, and we try to position ourselves as a trimming specialist. And the idea of working with Perennials was to have 2 of the best in their field, the Perennials being what we see as the best luxury performance company, textile company, and use their fibers and their yarns and their expertise along with Samuel & Sons. So it was a different type of collaboration. And then lastly, was the shade store. And the reason we did that, and it's just started last year, is we really believe that trimming is all about elevating design through the details. That's actually our mission. And sometimes for both designers and consumers, getting from the point of seeing trimming on a website or in a showroom, but actually putting it on a drape is difficult. So this is sort of making it easier to sell a finished product. And then this year we did something what I thought was a lot of fun. We partnered with Sarah Flint, and they used our passementerie on shoes. And very different to use the trim in fashion. It's actually the origin of Samuel & Sons is a business that's actually run by my cousins these days, M&J Trimming, and that business is in the fashion world. So this is sort of a return to what we've done, and I thought just great from a press and a brand perspective. And it's actually something that Beth and the Zoffany group have also done with Morris. And I'll pass it over to Beth. She could talk about some of her collaborations as well.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I just want to give you a little overview about our brands. We have 7 brands in our group. The overarching group name is the Sanderson Design Group, but in the US, we lead with the Zoffany brand. So in that are the brand Zoffany, Morris & Co., Sanderson. Morris & Co. and Sanderson are both 160 and 161 years old, respectively. We also have Harlequin, which is more of a transitional collection, and we own Clark & Clark as well, also Scion and Anthology. So here you have two of the most recent collaborations that we've done with designers. Actually, Ben Pentreath, many of you might know Ben Pentreath as the designer for Kate Middleton. The collection was launched in the middle of the first lockdowns, so it was really nice to be able to get these started. All the coloring and everything really happened remotely. So you see they've recolored Willow Bough. Joy has one of the Ben Pentreath Willow Bough designs behind her now. And it really brought an interesting aspect to Morris & Co. because we have a certain amount of designs, and we really like to play with the scale and to play with the color. And Ben brought like these really exciting colors and kind of took a piece of heritage and really made it extremely vibrant and very modern. The one that you see there, which is more of the brown when the Willow Bough on the left, that was something that a friend of his had on his sofa, and he really wanted to research and kind of bring that back. So he contacted us and he wanted a tour of the archives. And so once we gave him a tour of the archives, he was really blown away because we have, some really extensive archives, obviously, after 160 years. And we invited him to do this collaboration with him. And it was wildly successful, especially at a time when people were looking for something really new and exciting. Also, we launched the Zoffany Palladio collection, which you see the black ground with the bright colors. That is an artist by the name of Sam Wilde. He's a recent graduate of the Royal College of Art. And we really liked this. It was part of a collection that was, again, historical archives that we had brought back and rescaled and recolored. And then we added this, which was a completely new design. And it's really, he's very much into sustainability, and so are we. And this is, the name of this print is the Precarious Pangolin. And you see the precarious pangolin is carrying her young on her back and really trying to do everything she can to, to preserve her young and have, the fruits of life around him. But this was something really exciting. So, okay. Other collaborations that we've done, we work with Salamit, which is a furniture company. You see the bed to the left. Also in the middle, we have a little sectional sofa, which has been interesting and really expands the Morris brand. And they've done an amazing job of reinterpreting the designs into other materials. Also, we did a collaboration with National Trust, which is the largest charitable organization in England. What they do is they preserve historical buildings, landscapes, and monuments. Also, we've done fashion collaborations, as Michael mentioned. We did the Sarah Flint collaboration for Morris & Co., which was really fun. That was done last year. Actually, yeah, it launched in 2020. And then we also did a collaboration in 2018 with H&M, which was wildly successful, sold out completely, I think, in a matter of a day or two. And then we also did another collaboration with the Spanish leather goods luxury house, Loewe.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, firstly, kudos to both of you and the longevity of all of your brands. High praise, high praise. So let's get into it. How can firms stand out and increase brand recognition in a crowded pool? Michael, Beth, how can brands stand out? Everybody's trying to get into licensing and stand out in the crowd. What are the best measures of doing that?
I think it's important to stay relevant. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, Beth, go ahead.
It's important to stay relevant with the audience. Again, as I mentioned before, we've been around for 160 years. So we appreciate trying new things and meeting the demand of the customer and keeping them inspired and keeping them, providing them with compelling product. And that's the key to it, I think, like I said, to keep this longevity going.
Michael?
I totally agree with Beth there. It's for us in terms of the product, we're constantly challenging ourselves to innovate and to come up with new designs, new crafts, new materials. Actually, part of licensing has been for us that idea of bringing a new perspective, fill the void, what's missing, challenge us, let's think outside the box. And so we welcome that different perspective. And of course, firms, to stay relevant today, digital, right? I mean, if the pandemic has done nothing else, it's accelerated everything digital. I think we all knew we were headed there, just not this quickly. So beautiful photography, for instance, is something that, high quality and beautiful photography is something that we've actually been working on for years. And I find, for instance, that is one of the things that really differentiates firms today, whether it's on the design side or the manufacturing side, is how are you styling? How are you representing your brand? What are you doing on social, which is engaging the consumer? And it's also an opportunity to partner with other brands, or in our case, with designers. I'll bring up like a little story. So I used to be very friendly and work very closely with Mario Bawada in the Samuel & Son showroom, especially in the first 10 years of my career. But I would never tell anybody that I work with Mario Bawada, because for him in the early 2000s, and this sort of was beyond, throughout the industry, we were a secret source for him. We were a trade source, we were a secret source. And today, working together with designers, promoting them, and partnering with them, whether it's in social or at events, in whatever, or licenses, right? It's completely reversed. It's completely reversed, where we are publicizing those partnerships. And I think that's to the degree that firms can build their brand by working with other brands, having beautiful photography, being strong in digital, and doing social. I mean, these are all different things that you can do to stand out. I don't think there's just one thing, but those are some things, and the environment's shifted in a big way.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, I know that I'm having a lot of conversations with designers who are interested in licensing agreements, as we're all interested in expanding our revenue streams. What a lovely thing. How can a design firm align themselves with a maker for a partnership without giving out all of your email information?
Ideally, it'd be great if they already had a relationship and they already worked together. So it is key that it's an organic relationship. And they have sort of the same or similar aesthetics. I think that's what really makes it. And from there, you know, you really have to, again, like Michael was saying, you really have to stretch the brand. They have to feed off of each other as well and really enhance each other. It can't just be, all right, I want to latch on to one person or one company. It really has to be something where both parties bring something really inspirational to the table. And, you know, they're both better off in the end. I think that's really what makes a good partnership. And both companies and partnerships or partners learn a lot from each other.
But what does
Yeah.
that conversation sound like, Michael? Does someone pick up the phone and say, I've got some designs and I love and appreciate your work, and I'm looking for an opportunity to expand and diversify my business? You know, can we chat? What are the first steps in doing that?
I do think, you know, in my experience, we've had, you know, with Lori Weitzner, for instance, it was more serendipitous. You know, we met at a market, and she introduced fabrics at the time for Sacco, and we were amazed. And so we were introduced to her, and we're like, wow. And she's like, you know, I always wanted to do trimming, and that's really sort of how it worked. And it sort of speaks to what Beth's saying, because it's really about, you know, those synergies and that organic synergies. Like, do we enjoy working with this person? That's actually a qualifier, right? Is how much do we know? It's a partnership, right? And so if you're going to enter a partnership, you want it to be really enjoy. That, at least for us, right? It's also about enjoying that process. And I would say that especially earlier on, it's always been very design driven. So in the case, for instance, again, of Lori, it's a modern romantic aesthetic. It was more modern than anything we had at the time. And so that brought to us a whole new territory. And we asked her to challenge us, right? So that was exciting. And if you look at our other designer license, Tim Corrigan, it's much more traditional. And it's something that we thought we were lacking. Or Laura Carrar, who is from, you know, a Mexican craft background, right? And very ethnic. And Roger Thomas, where we specifically challenged him to say, we want to make something that's great for hospitality. We want scale, we want color, because that's what you're telling us we're missing. So that has been a big part of, for us, licensing. At this stage of our business, it's changed a little bit. I think that for some of the bigger fabric houses, I would imagine it's the same, right? They to have licensing arrangements, it's a limited part of the budget. And so some of the things that we're exploring, for instance, are more capsule collections these days, so that we can enhance the brand and that partnership and those synergies, but do it maybe in a smaller way that really encapsulates something great. But you know, I would say that if we're talking to design firms, it's really important for them, you know, not to just be, hey, I want another revenue stream. Really, when it's authentic in, hey, I have this great idea and it's not in the market, like, that's exciting for us. And yeah, so, you know, obviously it can happen a lot of different ways. I mean, I've been approached by PR firms and representatives. I have to say, I think it's less authentic in that way. I prefer to know the designer rather than to know a representative of the designer. And so anyway, that's a little bit of my take on it.
And if you don't know the designer, are you kind of willing to take a chance if the designs are really good?
Yeah, but it's always a dance, right? Because and even in my case, I don't know that I want to look at someone's designs if I'm not already signed up.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to unsee them.
Yeah.
So, you know, it could be tricky in that regard.
So to both of you, has marketing been sort of difficult now during the pandemic, or with the absence of trade shows and events?
Yeah, no.
I mean, Beth, you've got some new product. Michael, you've got new product. How has it been reaching the design community during this time?
For us, I think it's been easy. Everybody's in the same place. here, right? Digitally, everybody's on their phone or on their laptop. So you know where to go and you know how to target. And as Michael mentioned before, photography is everything right now since we're all digital. But no, I think it's actually been really easy because you know where you have to focus, and you just have to create the excitement and the content to reach the customer, or to reach, your audience. So I think it's been great. Eventually, we'll expand once we can. We want to go back to hosting events and being in front of the customer, and our clients, but because it is a tactile industry, obviously, and it's very, very high touch. How many times do you touch a sample before you actually place the order, and how long does that process happen? It's often 6 months. But no, marketing it's been pretty straightforward. I think our real challenge is how do we break out of this mode, because things are going to open up, and everybody talks about Zoom fatigue. Haven't really seen it yet, but we want to see each other in person now. But it's kind of like being in a movie theater and coming out, into daylight. It kind of hurts your eyes a little bit. It's going to take some time, I think, for everybody to get used to it. But it will happen, and when it happens, and we'll be there. So it's really, I think it's going to have to be, a multi-pronged approach going forward.
What about for you, Michael? How has social media been for your business during the pandemic with marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just in general, when you look at what's happened with marketing and the, no trade shows and lack of traffic into the showrooms and stuff, it's forced us to shift resources, right, and reconsider our digital strategy. I agree with Beth in some ways that it's simpler, and then in other ways, it's really made you think quickly about, can you just continue to do it? I think that both of our companies are fortunate to have had a relatively strong digital strategy going into COVID. I feel badly for the companies that had to scramble and, catch up, because it's really hard, honestly, to catch up. I mean, we'll be celebrating 100,000 Instagram followers any day now, so that should be fun. But in a way, I feel like we had a head start. I think what's happened is, yes, it's simplified it, and we've changed some strategy in terms of like launching products. So we realized that digitally we want to engage customers more frequently. So we do that with maybe more frequent posts. We can do it with blogs and e-blasts. And we do it with launching product more frequently. So spreading out our product, we used to do it just, 2 launches a year. So there's a lot, but I think that the trade shows and things actually, again, I think it's a detriment, especially to smaller companies that are not, that are trying to be discovered, right? It's harder to get discovered, I think, today, unless you're very savvy socially, social, which I'm personally not, but I know that some of these, a lot of designers are, but I think that's, one of the keys.
Yeah. So what advice do you give someone with a lot of interest who doesn't know where to start with a collaboration and licensing agreements?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, if you have a lot of interest, I mean, you're talking to somebody who spent 20 years selling trimming, and most laymen, don't even know what I do when I when I talk to them and tell them, trimming, what is it? So we're super, super niche, and I think I attribute being niche to our success. So I know it can be very difficult, but one of the first things is to pick something, right, and just focus. My experience says if you're the best at one thing, you can be a lot more successful than being really good at a lot of things. So that would be my advice for a lot of interest. If you have a lot of interest, I think that if you're trying to get started with building a brand or doing licensing, I think one of the most successful things we did 20 years ago as a starting point was hire a PR firm. That really was an opportunity to help, whether you're a designer or manufacturer, you don't have, let's say for us, we didn't have the ad budget, but now we were getting editorial coverage, right, for the cost of the PR firm, which can be a fraction of the price. So, and it also can introduce you to opportunities and networks and things like that. So, I mean, that's I don't know, they're two separate things, but I think that the one piece of advice I do give all the time, especially to companies in our industry on the manufacturing side, is get a PR firm.
Yeah. Beth, what do you think? What do you think a design firm should do for their first approach out of the gate?
For sure, I think the PR firm is important. It's kind of what brought us all here today. But yeah, no, the PR firm I think is very key for a lot of the designers. But like Michael said, I think you really have to stay focused and not just focus on one talent, but what is that talent that is going to bring you revenue, that's going to keep you in business, that's going to allow you to support some of your other interests. And from there, it is important to keep them going, because if you do have other interests, layer them into, you know, what you do best and what you know, generates your revenue. I think it's important to do that and to see the future. You know, where do you see your business going? But again, other interest is a positive thing, but you know, we were talking otherwise, you don't have to be so super diversified, but really stay focused.
Well,
So-
I want to point out for Beth, I mean, you know, Morris and Company. I mean, I am amazed by Morris and Company because it is so true to who it is, right? And so focused. I just think it's worth noting. And now, you know, and I don't know, maybe it's always been super successful, but I can't, you know, sort of feel like I see it everywhere and just how hot it is right now.
Yeah.
I just think that's a great example of, you know, staying focused on who you are and what your brand is about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for noticing. You're right. That is a good example, but it is, you know, our business is fabric and wallpaper, really textile, fabric, wallpaper.
Yeah.
And, you know, with that though, we do layer in, as I mentioned before, you know, we have we're not furniture makers, but we work with the furniture makers such as Salamet. And, you know, we're not fashion designers, but we work with fashion designers. So, and that's really, I think, you know, but as long as we stay focused to fabric and wallpaper, we're going to be successful. So thank you. And, you know, Morris, it only has around 160 designs. That's it. We don't create new designs for Morris like we do some of the other brands. With those limited designs, so we make a really nice presentation. From there, we play with color, we play with scale, we play with base cloths, you know, different types of textured wallpaper, you know, and that's how we expand from there.
So how do you both protect your designs? I mean, they're sort of like, Michael, you've got some of everything from ethnic product to traditional to very contemporary. Beth, you sort of have a particular niche with respect to florals and very creative graphics with Zoffany and Morris & Co. How do you protect those? How do you protect your authenticity without someone just simply adding a little element and claiming it their own? Because we're not an industry with, you know, licensing sort of copyright, so to speak. How do you do that?
So I'm not going to have a great answer, but I'm happy to, Beth, if you have a great answer to this one.
I'm going to leave this one to you, Michael. I think you've got a great answer is what I'm assuming.
No, I really don't. So, I mean, that is a challenge. I know it was a challenge for us early on. There was a time, again, first 5 years or so in being in the industry, a shop opened up around the corner from us in New York, knocked off exactly what we had just launched and worked tirelessly to innovate. We were making it in France. They went and just basically sent the samples off to China and even admitted that they did it.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and going through a copyright process is not as straightforward as you might imagine. Now, ultimately, I will say, you know, we do take steps to try to copyright new innovative things, but the reality is that it's not a straightforward process to protect them, depending on, you know, the scale of what you're doing. What we did find, however, is that the designer, especially the designers that we work with, they don't want just what it looks like. They want quality.
Right.
They want the detail of the color. They want a service experience. They want a showroom. And I will tell you that, I don't know, 2-3 years later, that company closed down. And was that because it wasn't about selling the same product for a lower price, right? It was about a holistic experience that you were going to have. When you come to Samuel & Sons, there's 10,000 choices. There's, obviously the sample and the experience of shopping in the showroom, the service, we'll stand behind the quality and so forth. So, and then more maybe than anything else, it's about innovating, right? Because like, we'll say, look, they've done something and it's similar, but we're already on to the next thing. We're always thinking about the next thing. And we're innovating or designing at such a rapid rate these days. Our design studio is putting out 8 to 10 collections a year. That we're really just focused on the future. So
yeah. So when do you both know when it's time to really start editing your lines and stop piling new stuff on, but just sort of archive and create special collections for things that you're sort of putting aside? How do you know when it's time to do that?
It's definitely a process and something that we're working on, and really, it's sort of the 80-20 rule as well too. Instead of just continuously pumping out product, it really needs to be product that makes sense and is meaningful. And our collections are probably getting a little bit smaller and a little bit more focused and edited. And that's really what I think people want. They don't want to just search through tons and tons and tons of product and collections and designs. So we want to focus on what we really think that the market wants and show that and display that. And it's working. I find it's really working. I mean, when you go to a retailer or a website, you're going there for their edit. And that's what we're producing as well. Or when you go to an interior designer, you're going to the interior designer for their edit of the other collections or what's in the market. And we want to provide the same type of edit as well too, because also there's a sustainability factor here. And, that's something, again, that's important to our company, and it's written in our values. We've just joined the Planet Mark program and received our 2nd certification. And so, again, it's something that's in our blood. And also with Sanderson, we have the royal warrant. And in order to maintain that royal warrant, it requires, sustainability. So we really want to just focus on the best of the best and offer the best of the best. So
I think it's a balance, right? The designs often can last well over a decade for us. In terms of having product that's out there. And then at the same time, we want to continually offer something new, which is sort of accelerating the basically discontinuing product, right? So instead of lasting 10 years, it might be now 7 years, things like that. It's a balance of, like Beth's saying, you don't want to have just too much, right? It's just, overwhelming. For us, we're trying to find a solution. First of all, also because when you work with trimming, it's about having the right colors to coordinate with fabrics. So we do have to have a pretty, that's why we have sort of that 10,000 SKU number. So it's that balance of saying, okay, I want to introduce a lot of new product. As you do it, you're also going to have to discontinue quite a bit of product. So you don't want to do too much. You don't want to discontinue too much. You don't want to discontinue too quickly. And then just in terms of really archiving, I mean, I think we're also getting to the point where, we're archiving our designs as they're being discontinued, because we know that, design is cyclical and there'll be new ways to innovate some of the older styles, which I'm sure Beth has experience there at Zoffany and or Sanderson. Yeah.
So it still keeps giving.
Yes, it keeps giving. So Beth, you've had a very extensive career in fashion as well. Do you think that the work that you're drawn to right now comes with a very fashion-forward ethos?
With fashion, I have a real appreciation for craftsmanship And that's why it was easy for me to transition into this position, because you know, we own our own factories, and our factories are, you know, one of them is 100 years old. So, which is kind of goes back to Michael's comment about the authenticity. So in the end, people, when they buy Morris or when they buy Sanderson, they want the original Morris and Sanderson. They don't want the knockoff. You know, you don't want like to be wearing a pair of fake Chanel earrings or, you know, a fake Gucci belt. You want the authentic product, right? So that's kind of what I've been able to see. And yeah, it's really different. You know, with collections, it's a little bit of a slower process than fashion. Fashion moves fast. And, you know, you're buying a new blouse and you're replacing it the next year, basically. When it comes to your home, you know, you're really making decisions that will last with you for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that is really nice. And I think you can kind of get a grasp on what the business is, and you can project and you can plan and you can really embrace. And, you know, the trend isn't fast, it isn't quick, but you see it over time and over progression. Like Mike was saying, you know, you've got things in the collection that are 10 years old, and that would not, well, it happens some in fashion. If you can do that, you have a real winner. You know, it's really, it's a huge victory. That's what everybody, you know, aspires for, especially, you know, in leather goods. But it's really interesting to see, but people have very similar behaviors. They really, really do. So, you know, also in people's selection of what do I want to wear today versus what do I want to put in my home. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different. You know, you have people that may just wear black every day, but you go into their home and it's full of color, you know? So or people that are really creative in their clothing choices, but yet you walk in and it's all gray and it's all new, it's all white. So, but I do think people gravitate towards colors they like. I think there's a lot that is very telling. So soon we'll be launching a color story collection with Harlequin, which I think people will appreciate, and the theory of color. So anyhow, very exciting, but there is a lot of similarity. It's just at a slower pace.
And Michael, you definitely have some very fashion forward haute couture trimmings up there in Samuel and Sons. So definitely, I think you're pretty fashion forward, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, just coming full circle on, you know, the brands, building the brand and collaborations. I mean, I couldn't agree more with Beth saying in terms of being authentic. I think, look, at the end of the day, you know, we want customers to believe in buying Samuel & Sons, that they're getting fashion forward design, that they're getting high quality, that they're getting experience. I mean, I think if there's one takeaway, you know, from this last hour, it's, you know, who are you as a brand? Define it, and then live it and be it. There's a lot of ways to go about building that brand, but as you build the brand, right, then the copycats become less relevant, less of an issue, because people don't want the copy of Morris. They want Morris. They want that brand on it, because they know what it stands for. They have 100 years of knowing what it stands for. So I think you know, we're on our way to doing that as well. You know, and one other thing that I don't think I brought up, but we talk a lot about licensing. I think licensing with designers was on the manufacturing side was a little more exciting 10 years ago than it is today. I think today manufacturers have opportunities to collaborate with designers in so many ways. One of the first things I used to tell, you know, if Lori Weitzer or even Roger Thomas, they came to me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? And they say, you know, we want to do trim. You know, my first thing was, you're not really going to make much money doing trim. You know, that would be the caution. They say, you know, no, but that's okay. We want to do it because we see a void, we enjoy it, and so forth. And so, and unfortunately, they probably did pretty well after all. But it's really about building the brand, right? You to align Samuel & Sons and Lori Weitzer builds both of our brands. And I think today, getting back to the original story about, you know, how it used to be such a secret to work with a brand, now there's an opportunity to collaborate with them in other ways. I mean, we are all the time, Emily, who does our social, right? She's always talking to designers through Instagram and other channels. And we have an entire email just assigned social@samuelsons.com, that's where designers have the opportunity to share works with Samuel & Sons. And by us posting to 100,000 followers and tagging the designer and showing their work, that's a way that you're building your brand in a small way. You could do that with Samuel & Sons, but you can do that with multiple brands, and you become more relevant. You know, there were in New York, I mean, it feels like years ago, but I guess just a year ago when we used to have events, I would go to an event, a magazine event or a trade event and so forth. And it seemed to be the same clique or group of designers that would be there in New York, right? That was the game that if you want to be in the licensing game, get your editorial coverage, show up at the events. You have to focus on that. And today you can do the same thing, but you do it digitally. And so I just thought that, you know, when we agreed to do this, one of the things I was thinking is it really licensing? Is that the real thing that we should be talking about? I feel like that might come at the end, and for some designers it comes, but I think that there's so many other ways now to build your brand beyond that. And that I thought was a good easy way to get involved.
Would Samuel & Sons or Zoffany ever consider working with a celebrity outside of the realm of design? A similar celebrity designer, I suppose, or celebrity outside of design, someone to be, I guess, the ambassador of your companies as a way of sort of expanding the reach beyond the trade community?
Why not? You know, there's a lot of celebrities that are influential, that are very interested in design, and they have a voice, most importantly. So no, why not? You know, make it fun, I think, and make it intriguing for people. You know, but they have to be able to relate to your brand, right? You know, and as we were saying before, with any partnership, there has to be some sort of a marriage there, you know, a compatibility. And no, listen, why not? We're open to different people, as you know, representing our brand. So I think it makes it interesting.
I could see
Michael,
Helen Mirren draped in some Samuel & Sons trimming.
What was that?
I said I could see Helen Mirren draped in some.
That might be Helen Mirren. you know, I don't. One of the things that we have had with licenses initially, it was never about the celebrity brand. It was never about the number of social media followers. It was much more design driven, and I think it remains much more design driven. The way I think of our core customer, it's a high end designer. We're working, you know, fortunately, I think both of us are working with many of the top designers in the world. And I guess what I struggle with that is, you know, does that designer want to buy a celebrity branded trim line? I think they prefer actually to buy Samuel & Sons, you know. So, you know, the partnerships are great and they enhance the brand, but we don't want them to define the brand. And so that's the balance we're also working on.
Yeah. So, I mean, for each of you, what is the timeline of your product from concept to development when it actually hits your showrooms? What's that timeline like for trimming and for the wallpaper and all of that? Because it seems like, every 6 months it just sort of appears, but what's the fast forward to getting there?
You know, something such as the Ben Pentreath collection, that all happened while we were in lockdown, and it happened virtually. And, you know, our creative director was in the design studio working on it, you know, Zooming with Ben, you know, back and forth. So that actually happened pretty quickly. But a lot of the collections, such as, you know, Palladio, which we launched in lockdown, that was in development for years. So a lot of these documents for us, you know, again, some of them are 160 years old or 80 years old or 40 years old, the original documents, and it takes time to develop. We also are always researching new documents and new works of art in order to translate into interesting wallpaper techniques, or, you know, same with fabric. So it could really, a lot of them, they could take 2 to 3 years to develop from beginning to end. When I started going to the UK 2 years ago, I saw some of these that that have been in the making, are just now going to be launching next year. So it really is. It's at least a 2.5, 3 year process a lot of times.
And for you, Michael, same?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I was surprised to hear that it could take 2-3 years for you as well. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the complexity of the design, right? And I think that's why actually some of what we're doing now is smaller. As we spread out our launches, we're able to do some small things as well. And when it's a little smaller and simpler, we can do it quicker. But our Marissa Gutmacher, who does our design, who's our design director, I mean, she works, unbelievably hard on getting things out quickly. And still, I think the timeline is 1 year plus. Yeah, I mean, I've been there 3 years. When we're trying to innovate, I mean, Roger Thomas can tell you our first collection, I kept apologizing every 3 months.
Wow.
Because, you think it's going to be a year, but when you're trying to do something that's never been done, it's going to, and when you want to get it just right in terms of, the color and the quality and so forth. And I think it's that, look, again, that's what the brands are about, is that attention to detail. That's, that's who we are. And so we won't skimp on timelines, but it could be really long.
Is your work often influenced by, or what if you're in the midst of a project and rolling out a new collection, and Pantone decides the new color is boom? Do you sort of rush to sort of make concessions so that it's on that awful word trend, or do you just keep going?
No, we I think the only times I think that we've I would say that the times in a way we faltered, I don't know that it's faltered, but have been less successful, is when we've been looking around at others and saying, oh man, we should have done that and we should do something similar. In our history, we've learned that's a really bad path. So we now actually do, for many years now, we do the exact opposite. We try to block out, we try to, take in information, but we don't try to be reactive. We try to chart our own path.
Beth, for you as well? Keep going?
Yes, keep going. Stay focused on what the plan is and what your, the essence of what the collection is, and be true to yourself and to your client.
Yeah. So how do you measure the success of a new collection?
For a lot of companies, it's easy to say, it's immediately, it's based on sales. But here it's, we obviously try to look at sales, but it's also based on reactions and responses. So again, back to when we launched Ben Pentreath, we knew immediately that it was going to be a successful collection based on the reactions when we launched, so digitally, and from the press. So the press got extremely excited. They loved what they saw. We knew it was going to be a hit. But as I mentioned, it's, beginning to end, it's a 6-month process, but it's really all about brand awareness, and you can see the brand awareness right off the bat. So when we do these collaborations and these partnerships, it really does enhance the brand awareness, and I think that is the key. And so that's really what we use to measure versus direct sales. Sales are obviously what we're all here for, but again, it's the brand awareness when we're doing some of these partnerships.
And you, Michael, how do you measure the success of a new collection?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Beth. I mean, obviously, sales is one way to look at it, but I think each collection we have different goals for each collection. Sometimes it's about engagement, sometimes it's about sales. My father used to say to me, he said, I used to be very data driven. I had a finance background, so I used to look at all the reports, and I'm like, we should really discontinue this trim. He goes, Michael, if you discontinue every trim that doesn't sell, you'll have no purple in the showroom. So it's like, you'll be stuck with cream, and today you'll probably have cream and blue, right? So, it's you have to realize, right, the goal in introducing some product is not just sales. It's filling a void, it's having that color, it's creating engagement on social. I often see, my sample department will tell me, this thing is sampling like crazy. And I say, because it's a novelty, it's, it's really cool and it's different. It won't be a bestseller, even though it's sampling better than the bestsellers. But it has a lot of interest, and that was the intention. So that's great. That's what we wanted. We want people to get excited. We want people to take samples, even if it didn't ending up in your scheme. Or in our case, there's certain product that is so unique that you can only use a couple yards of it, really, because otherwise it'd be too busy or too much, or so we'll have a lot of sales, but it'll never translate into the volume that we'll see on something that might be simpler, for instance. So yeah, I think we measure a lot of different ways, and we're probably not so structured in terms of 6 times sales of what the cost. No, we don't really. We probably should, but we don't do that.
I'm a believer that you need a little bit of vinegar to capture the eye. It can't always be so serene and peaceful. There's got to be something that is a little off in order for people, to
respond. Yeah. So what's next for you, Beth and Zoffany and Ben and Morris and Co? What's next? What are you thinking of for 2021?
Well, you'll have to sit tight.
Okay.
We definitely have some really exciting collaborations coming up, partnerships. And then we also have just, beautiful collections coming up from each of the brands. So obviously we'd love to work with Ben again. But we do have other collaborations coming up throughout the year. So we'll surprise you when we get there.
That'll be very exciting.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that. Another H&M maybe? Maybe. That was so darn successful.
Cool. That was very cool, yes. And that collaboration, I have to say, it really did introduce Morris to America, I think, 2 years ago. So, that was part of the discussion was, all right, there's people flocking to H&M, but are they coming into the showroom? Over time they did, and we've seen it now. The business has really grown exponentially, and in those 2 years since that happened. So I think that's a real testament to the fact that partnerships do make a brand sometimes. So you really have to expand.
Sorry, I think to that point, we did that partnership with the Shade Store, and you did even that partnership with H&M. In some ways, they have a similar intention, which is we're trying to build the brand, even if we're not selling it directly to them, to a wider audience, right? The designers today, most of the designers, especially the ones that use Samuel & Sons, know Samuel & Sons very well. And I think we've developed a strong rapport with them. But their consumers don't necessarily know Samuel & Sons. What I would love is that when the designer goes to the homeowner and says, this is the trim we want to use, that they get excited by the brand Samuel & Sons as well. And so whether you're doing it with H&M or you're doing it with Shade Store, you're now at least creating awareness around your brand to a wider audience. And I think that's going to be more and more important as we go forward.
Yeah, that sounds great. We had a couple of questions, so let me dial them up. One question is, do you think in today's climate that someone can start out in design, been in the home furnishing industry for over 20 years, but want to get into interior decorating? Mario Boada is my decorating idol, and he taught us, and we were at SCAD and heard him talk that interior decorating is a noble profession. I mean, I think everybody in their whatever left hand now is getting into the interior design community because they're influenced by some of the design shows that they see, and it looks like something that everyone can do. Of course, it's everyone can do it, but they don't understand the business behind it. And I truly believe that the interior design business is really 20% design and 80% business. That's just my interpretation. Do either of you have a comment about that?
You definitely have to know what you're doing in order to prevent making costly mistakes, right? I mean, it's easy to make a $20,000 mistake. And that's where training and education and schooling and the technical aspect are critical. You can't just say, oh, I'd like to start decorating and expect for other people. For yourself, yes, if you're willing to take that risk, but even myself, I used a decorator because I knew I could make some mistakes, and it paid off in the end. You know, it was very beneficial.
I'm always kind of surprised when people in the design industry say they hire interior designers, because I mean, you're just constantly flooded with so many sources and such that it seems that, you know, you would just sort of know what to do yourself. But when you get into the sort of idiosyncrasies and the details about millwork and stuff, I can understand that. But you're all such wonderful colorists that it would seem to me that it would be a very easy approach for both of you. So I'm surprised you said that, Beth, but hey, education is so important. What about you, Michael? You think you could do your own home project? A little interior design?
Absolutely not. I couldn't do it. I couldn't even make the decisions.
Ah.
Yeah, you know what? I think for I don't know, speak for Beth, but you know, being in the trade, we always like, you know what, we'll do it ourselves, and many of us basically have virtual backgrounds because of it. We don't end up getting there, right? So, you know, and it's tedious. You know, there's a lot of, like you said, the business side of it. I mean, I think that just experiencing and working with clients, you see that there's a lot of talent that unfortunately does not end up successful because they don't have the business side. So it's always important to educate yourself on both pieces of it. I tend to partner with great creative people in my business, and I'm more the business side of it. So yeah, I think education is key, but I also think that's like a life question. You know, 20 years in, I have a passion for something. This is what I want to do. You know, I admire people who are willing to make a career change at that point and start new. But, you know, it speaks again to some of the things we talked about, which is, you know, do you have the commitment and the dedication to really make it work? It's not going to just, you know, let me just do that one day. So you have to really have a strategy in place.
Indeed. So I think that this has been a lovely roundup for finding the right fit and defining your brand to make the best impact and increase revenue opportunities, from partnerships to licensing agreements. So I just, anything you both would love to share that we didn't touch on? Any final thoughts? Come on with some final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, for us, you know, we're opening a Dallas showroom. We should have I'm actually going to be there next week. You know, we're excited about that. And in terms of collaborations and building the brand, like we're always, I think for each brand, it's going to be different. For us, we're really building out our European distribution now. And so one of the future collaborations, you know, I'm not privy to announce it, but it's going to be with a British designer, right? Because that's something that is important to us. I think just as, you know, some final thoughts, it's really, again, about thinking about how to build your brand is thinking about the environment that we're in today with the pandemic and everything accelerating digital. We talked about photography, we talked about social, we talked about being authentic. You know, maybe getting a PR firm as a first step to really getting out there and really just being active. So whether you're active with, you know, on the social platforms with other companies, you could collaborate in ways that don't cost you or the company anything. That's, again, another way to build a brand. I think that you want to lay out a strategy to really build your brand, and you do it in baby steps. I mean, it's amazing to me to look back and realize what we have accomplished. I wish I could say that I had this big master plan, that this is the way it's going to happen. No, we just did things step by step, and you know, and so I would say, again, it's just, we knew who we were as a trimming specialist. And so maybe the most important question that you have to ask yourselves is, who do you want to be? You can't be everything to everybody. And even though revenue, for instance, from licensing sounds nice, does that fit with who you want to be and your focus and your attention to your customer? Really, and that's the one thing we really need to talk about. Who is your customer? Mm-hmm. And, you know, for us, our first core value is about the customer. It's customer centricity. And we always think, how can we make the experience better, easier, more convenient, reliable for the customer? And I think that for designers, if they lose focus on who their core customer is, that can be very dangerous. So you really have to be prepared to build your brand in a way that keeps your customer front and center.
Thank you, Michael. And Beth, any closing thoughts?
I agree. I think you have to focus on the core customer, and one day you can go from traditional to modern, even though you can evolve and you can still kind of push your limits. But I think it's important to really have a defined point of view and build your brand, and that's how you're going to build your brand as a designer. And again, social media is important. I would say post as much as you can, post as much content as you can. It's important to be authentic, but if you need to post inspiration and expand out of what you have as your own content, I think that's okay. I see a lot of designers do that. A lot of credible designers do that. And I think that's fine. As far as what we're doing at Zoffany, again, I'll remind everybody, we have a large portfolio of brands all available at Jerry Pear, wallpaper and fabric. So not just Morris, which got a lot of conversation today, but Sanderson is very important to us as well. Zoffany and Harlequin, which is really offers a lot to a lot of people. It's not just florals and print. It really has a modern aspect as well too. So it may not be a brand that everybody's familiar with, but it really does cover a lot of bases. So please come visit us at Jerry Pear.
Well,
yeah, and so let me just add just also a thank you to ADAC, to Joy for hosting, and I think we could even say to our PR firm, since we talked about PR, who helped coordinate this. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, since this is an ADAC event, that thank you to Ainsworth Noah, who's been a tremendous partner for Samuel & Sons.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Beth, for your contribution of your time today with this, which is the biggest luxury of all. And thank you to the ADAC team, Jerry Pear, Ainsworth Noah, and Tyler, and Fresca, and Dan, all the lovely people behind this at Spread PR. And we are honored to have spent this time with you all. So let's continue ADAC celebration of Digital Day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, everyone.